I'm joined now by Aurel Braun. He is a professor of international relations and political science at the University of Toronto. Welcome back to the program, Aurel.
Hello.
So, Russian forces are now attacking western cities in Ukraine for the first time and on the move towards the capital, Kiev. What can we glean from this? Are we in a new phase of fighting, from your view?
The Russian forces are desperately trying to make additional gains. Clearly, Vladimir Putin had badly miscalculated this enterprise, this conflict that is causing so much devastation. He had expected that there would be a quick victory. That did not happen. Russians are losing a lot of troops, a lot of equipment, and the sanctions are beginning to bite. I think it's important to note that the talks with Iran have been suspended, that is the United States and the European Union talks, because Russia had demanded that there should be guarantees that those sanctions will not affect Russian trade with Iran. Now, that tells us something about the fact that the sanctions are biting. It tells us that these sanctions have collateral effects. It means that anyone, any country that trades with Russia is likely to be affected by these sanctions. So you have the problem of military miscalculation, sanction miscalculation, miscalculation about the reaction of the EU. There's a massive rearmament going on in the EU. Germany is pouring 100 billion euros into its military this year. That's larger than the Russian budget for the entire year, and they committed themselves to 2%. Poland is increasing defense spending to 3%. Romania is increasing defense spending. The United States just put in another 42 billion. So there is a whiff of desperation in these attacks by Russia.
So, Professor, as you say, Putin's quick victory did not materialize. So is time on Russia's side? How long can Russia and Russian troops sustain this fight?
This is what we just don't know. It depends a good deal on whether Western countries can keep providing the Ukrainian forces with defensive armaments as Russia controls more and more of the airspace. It depends on how far the Russians are willing to go in attacking civilians and causing so much damage that perhaps morale could collapse. There's no sign of that at the moment. It depends whether the West might want to create a kind of humanitarian corridor. And it depends on the reaction of the Russian population, which so far is supportive, but that can begin to change when the casual figures begin to come in, when sanctions become more and more biting. And so there's a tremendous amount of unpredictability. But clearly, there's tragedy on the ground, a horrific loss of life. We see indelible images of families with children being killed. And we know that in terms of the economic structure of the international system, there are major changes taking place, and that creates uncertainty everywhere throughout the globe. I think ultimately what will be seen is that Mr. Putin has badly miscalculated in many, many ways.
So, Professor, in that same vein, how do you see Russia standing in the world now as the crisis develops, and how it might be once the dust settles?
Of course, it depends on whether Russia is able to capture Ukraine. If they're able to capture Ukraine, then Vladimir Putin can say, well, I made this great gain. I'm trying to rebuild Russia as a superpower. And yes, the sanctions are really painful, but we are willing to take that pain because of the vast gain that we have made in trying to reconstitute the Russian Empire. It's doubtful that even if he succeeds in this, he would be able to hold on to Ukraine indefinitely because there will be resistance. But short of that, what you're likely to see is the economic damage. And that economic damage is not just something that will touch Russia. We can see this in this problem of the economic relationship between Russia and Ukraine. That will affect all countries that have economic relations with Ukraine, with Russia. And what that tells us is that the damage will be much more widespread than we can even see at this stage. And it would be wise for all countries that deal with Russia, whether it's Western countries or other countries, to carefully re-examine what the relationship is. What are the benefits?
Right.
What are the negatives in this relationship? Because, in a sense, Vladimir Putin has not only caused tragedy to Ukraine, but he's let down the Russian people and he has let down all his partners.